Welcome, fellow bookworms, to Tibra's Den. My name is Whitney, and today I have an ABC Author Challenge update for you. So this month I read my R author, which is Lucinda Riley. I read The Orchid House. And then my S author was Harold Schechter, and I read Nevermore. So we're going to be talking about both those books. Both of them, there were things that I did enjoy about them. And there were things that I didn't enjoy so much and made it kind of hard to get through each of the books. But overall, both solid reads. I'm glad that I read them. And so, yeah, I guess let's jump right in with The Orchid House. So, this is kind of a historical fiction and it has two timelines. So, you have the present day with Julia, who has lost her husband and her son, and so she's kind of healing from that. And her grandfather used to tend the garden and the orchids at Wharton Park. So she has a lot of fond memories. Well, the estate ends up going to Kit, but it's really run down and he really doesn't have the finances, so he ends up putting on a sale. And Julia and her sister go, and Julia has met Kit once before, and so they kind of reconnect. Um, and start talking and whatnot. So you have their timeline, and then it flashes back to a former heir to the park, Harry, and during World War II, and so he ends up going off to war. And there's a secret that is felt for generations to come and almost destroys the estate, which is very accurate when you're reading it. Like, you understand why it did almost destroy, because Harry was the only heir. And there's something that happens, like he gets injured and he ends up staying in where is it at here, Thailand. So he's in Thailand recovering and such. And there's reasons why he almost doesn't go back home, and he has his young society bride Olivia, which plays a part as well. And so, yeah, this one, I like the premise of it. I thought there was a lot of emotion in this book. The thing that got me was it did kind of drag a little bit and it was a little bit dense, but it was all the twists. Like, you have the two different timelines, so you have multiple twists going on in both timelines. And that was a little bit overkill for me. I don't think, especially one particular twist relating to Julia, I did not think that twist needed to happen. Um, and I knew exactly what was going to happen as soon as the twist came about. I knew how it was going to play out. And I just thought that was a bit overkill. Like, the twist with Harry kind of made sense and such, but the twist with Julia was unnecessary, in my opinion. But still, there's a lot of emotion in this. It's kind of a more melancholy, heavy book, but I did enjoy the writing. I thought overall I enjoyed how it was written and such, even though it did drag a little bit. I think it could have been whittled down a little bit more than it was. And like I said, some of the twists were unnecessary. Like, there's a whole block of chapters related to the twists that could have been completely left out, and made the book a little bit shorter, because at that point I was kind of like, okay, like, I'm done now. Like, I don't need to read anymore. But of course, I pushed through and finished it out. But overall, I really like, especially the second timeline when it was back during Harry's time and such, and also the characters, especially the male characters, were a little bit weird to me. And I don't know if it was because of, but Kit wasn't. He was in present day, and just kind of how, like, they spoke. But it's also in England too, so it could have been the time frame. It could have been, the country and such. But just the way they spoke, like, I saw a lot of similarities between Kit and Harry, and they just seemed, there wasn't as much depth to them. But like I said, you really got the emotion, especially from Julia and Olivia as well. So, yeah, I thought it was pretty good. The twists were a little bit crazy and, like I said, a little bit overdone, but not bad by any means, especially if you do like historical fiction. Definitely worth a try. I could see myself rereading this, and the story's definitely going to kind of stick with me for sure. So that is The Orchid House. I think I gave that one 4 stars. And then this one got 3 stars. This is Nevermore by Harold Schechter. Um, this one has a very interesting premise. So it's basically, it is like a murder mystery. It is fiction, but the main character is Edgar Allan Poe, and so it's kind of based, like, has, things that are really happened in his life, like his cousin, and which I didn't know any of this going in, so I learned some stuff about Edgar Allan Poe that I did not know, and his, marriage to his 13-year-old cousin when he's 14 years old, her senior. Very creepy. This book was hard for me because I thought the writing was really good, but I did not like the narrator, which was Edgar Allan Poe. He was very pompous, and arrogant, and kind of snobby a bit. And then his affection for his cousin, his 12-year-old at this time cousin, was very, very creepy. But I thought the author captured that really well. I thought the writing was done really well, but I did not like Edgar Allan Poe. I did not like the narrator of this book. Like, I thought he was disgusting, and so that made it hard to read. And then it's also a murder mystery, which is not my favorite, and it does follow that kind of typical, plot layout of a murder mystery. This one was a little bit better than some of the others I read because, as far as like the suspects, I guess, it wasn't overdone. You had the initial suspect, and then they weren't just throwing a bunch of people and like, oh, well, it could be this person because of this, or it could be this person because of this. It was kind of a mystery after the initial one that they cast suspicion on. It was really kind of a mystery. Like, I didn't have a clue going on. It wasn't until later on when he made some comments as to the appearance of somebody he saw at the murder scenes that it was like, okay, I had an idea of where it was going, but I was still kind of in doubt because there wasn't enough information, but I was on the right track. Once we got to that point, I was like, okay, now I know exactly where it's going. The weird thing about this one was you had Edgar Allan Poe, and he's the one narrating the story. It's from first person, and he ends up teaming up with Davy Crockett. And when Davy Crockett talks, there's a very different dialect. And so I thought the writing was really well done, but my enjoyment of it was pretty low. But it did end up getting 3 stars, which is a solid read in my book. And I like kind of the atmosphere of it as well. I thought the atmosphere was done pretty well as well. As I'm just gonna say as well. Um, but no, I did think the atmosphere was good. It kind of had that Victorian vibes, and kind of gothic type vibes as well. And yeah, overall, I thought it was done well, even though I did not like the narration of it. And also the logic was a little bit faulty, I think. It didn't quite make sense as far as the who done it and such, like, and the fact that Edgar Allan Poe was part of the investigation and had this big connection to it in the end. Like, it logic was a little bit faulty, and the fact that it's a dynamic between Edgar Allan Poe and David Crockett, like, that was a little bit weird, but in a weird way it also worked. I don't know. If you like murder mysteries, give this one a try. Like, even though, like I said, Edgar Allan Poe is very, like, snobby and pompous, and then the creep factor with his affections for his cousin, his 12-year-old cousin. I do think, like I said, that really happened. He really married his cousin, that was significantly younger and only 13 at the time they ended up getting married. So I thought the author did a good job writing the book, even though the logic was faulty. And, like I said, the narration of Edgar Allan Poe, like, he just, yeah, like, could do without him. But overall, probably one of my favorite murder mysteries that I've read, since they're not really my thing. Even though this one did drag, like it really, like I expected to read it a lot faster than I did, um, especially in the beginning because you didn't have a whole lot to go on yet, and you're just slogging through Edgar Allan Poe's narration. And he's also long winded, which I don't like long winded books, but this did work in this situation because the narrator himself is long winded. So, like even when he's speaking, he's long winded. So, even though generally I don't like long winded books, it really worked in this situation to add to that character for sure. So, I don't know. Not my favorite out of what I read overall, but probably one of my favorite murder mysteries I've read recently. So that is Nevermore. But yeah, let me know if you've read either of these books or either of these authors, um, and what you thought about them. I know this author does like typically do like historical figures in his books. Like he has the A to Z encyclopedia of serial killers, and then he has a bunch of different books: bestial, depraved, deranged, deviant, outcry, and then Nevermore. So, um, yeah, definitely interesting. And this one too, I'm really glad I picked up and found as well. So I'll go ahead and leave you guys here, and yeah, happy reading, everyone. Bye.